Hello everybody. Today we are going on with pronunciation matters. We are going on comparing Rioplatense Spanish and BBC English. This time we are going to compare Rioplatense Spanish and BBC English consonants. The consonant system of any language seems easier to teach because we can describe place and manner of articulation. We can draw the articulators, and with the help of ICT we can even see the organs of speech moving. Perception of the differences in pronunciation are also simpler, and that is why if we ask our students to sound English, they will surely produce some characteristic features of English consonants, such as aspiration of plosives, el parque, darkening of the lateral, total, or production of a postal velar approximant instead of a trill. They are going to say tres and not tres. Observing the chart, we can perceive that there is numerical correspondence between English and Spanish plosives, nasals, and laterals. Here you can identify the English phonemes as dark blue and Spanish phonemes in pink. We find 4 fricatives which appeared in voiceless phonemes in English, in contrast with 4 voiceless fricatives in Spanish. We can add 3 voiced fricatives which result from allophonic variants of the bilabial plosive, voiced bilabial plosive, and this is the voiced bilabial fricative, the voiced dental fricative, which is an allophonic variant of the voiced dental plosive, and the voiced velar fricative, which is an allophonic variant of the voiced velar plosive. Even though Spanish speakers are not well aware of the difference between the phonemes and their allophonic variants, they can produce the sounds. Another sound which is known to Rioplatense Spanish speakers is the the voiceless dental fricative. This sound is not usually used in Spanish in everyday speech by Rioplatense Spanish speakers, but they are taught this concept when teachers in early schooling introduce the letter Z. So they learn to read zapato, zanahoria, and zorro. In this way, they make the difference between words written with the letter Z and words written with the letter S. This will enable informed teachers to help learners to become aware of the characteristics of the phonemes in order to identify them when heard and to produce them in due contexts. Besides these differences, Rioplatense Spanish has no initial cluster starting with S. So, in general terms, Spanish speakers, Rioplatense Spanish speakers, tend to add an extra schwa before the initial cluster. So instead of saying student, they are going to say a student. Rioplatense Spanish has no consonants which can function as syllabic nuclei. So, again, they tend to introduce a schwa in between the two consonants. Rioplatense Spanish and BBC English both present voiceless consonants as fortis and voiced consonants as linis, but the difference is more marked in English. Rioplatense Spanish has no aspiration of voiceless plosives in initial stressed position, so they tend to mispronounce the sound and not produce and they don't produce aspiration. This brings about a misunderstanding sometimes when they say might earn instead of might turn, or peace talks instead of peace talks. Aspiration in these cases marks the word division in our speech. Rioplatense Spanish voiced consonants are not unvoiced before a voiceless consonant. Final consonant clusters are only found in English. And the bilabial and alveolar nasals both occur in English and Spanish. But Rioplatense Spanish speakers often use the alveolar nasal instead of the bilabial nasal in final position, because in Spanish we don't have the bilabial nasal in final position. So we tend to mispronounce words in English which end in bilabial nasal. We produce the alveolar nasal instead. The velar nasal only exists in English, but it is not alien to Rioplatense Spanish speakers because it is an allophonic variant of the alveolar nasal in words like tango and tanque. There is assimilation of the velar plosive that follows the alveolar nasal, so we pronounce that allophonic variant of the alveolar nasal. The voiced labiodental fricative does not occur in Rioplatense Spanish. Instead of using it, we tend to use the voiced bilabial fricative, which we also use instead of the voiced bilabial plosive. Nevertheless, students develop the sound concepts in early stages of literacy when they learn to write words that contain the letter B and the letter V. In those cases, teachers, in order to help them to differentiate the spelling, they make students produce the correct sound. And nevertheless, in Spanish, we don't ever use the voiced labiodental fricative unless we use it for emphasis, and the same happens with voiced bilabial plosive, which especially in intervocalic position is never used, and it might be used in initial position for the sake of emphasis, as when mothers say basta. As regards the voiced and voiceless alveolar plosives only exist in English because in Spanish they are dental. That is why we tend to mispronounce the voiced dental fricative uh, in initial position mainly because we produce a dental plosive in Spanish in that position. And on the other hand, when the voiced alveolar plosive occurs in intervocalic position in fast speech, we Spanish speakers tend to produce um, voiced dental fricative instead. So we have to help students to improve their pronunciation by giving them um, uh, words together in which both sounds are uh, inserted so that they have to produce them alternatively, as in the odor, the other day, etc. The voiceless glottal fricative does not occur in Rioplatense Spanish. Rioplatense Spanish speakers tend to use the voiceless velar fricative instead, which is the sound we use when we read the letter J. So students tend to say he, her, etc. We have to work hard at helping them to produce the correct pronunciation until they produce he and her. The voiced palatal-alveolar affricate is the most difficult phoneme for students to produce, and we have to work hard at it, but we are going to discuss that in future videos. As regards the labial velar approximant, it is a sound which is quite difficult for students to produce because they associate it with the Spanish U sound, and they add voiced velar fricative uh, to the sound when reading. They say, why was Wendy? So, asking them to list words that contain the sound and to make nonsense sentences only with words that contain the sound helps them to put the labial velar approximant correct. They practice a lot because they have to think of words that contain the sound. So they associate the spelling with the sound. Then they organize sentences that they produce, and at the same time, while their peers produce the sentences, they perceive the correct and incorrect pronunciation of the sound. In that way, they improve their pronunciation. Uh, Spanish speakers tend to exaggerate the pronunciation of the lateral because they tend to darken the lateral everywhere, and we know that in English the dark lateral allophonic variant of the voiced lateral approximant is only produced in final position and before another consonant. So when students tend to produce the lateral darkened everywhere, we should give them instances in which the sound is both clear and dark, and force them to practice that. They are going to produce this sentence initially as Louis loves living all alone in the middle of the field. And they have to practice to end up reading Louis loves living all alone in the middle of the field. And there we have both instances of the consonant practice. Thanks for sharing, and we are going on analyzing ways of teaching sounds in future videos. Thank you very much.